The Valari Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They had conquered 47 worlds across 3 galaxies. Their ships were the fastest. Their weapons were the strongest. Their warriors had never lost a single war. Every species they met had 2 choices: surrender or die. Most chose to surrender. The ones who fought back were destroyed so completely that even their names were forgotten. High Commander Torvax stood on the bridge of his massive flagship. The ship was called the Eternal Dawn, and it was larger than most cities. Through the viewing window, he watched the endless darkness of space. His gray skin reflected the light from distant stars. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he read the report on his screen. "A new world," his assistant said. "Our scouts found it 3 cycles ago. They call it Earth." Torvax looked at the images. A small blue planet with 1 moon. Green and brown land. Large oceans. And billions of soft, weak creatures walking on 2 legs. They called themselves humans. "What level is their technology?" Torvax asked. "Very low, Commander. They have only reached their own moon. Their fastest ships take months to cross their own star system. They have nuclear weapons, but nothing that could scratch our shields. They spend most of their time fighting each other." Torvax made a sound that was almost like laughter. "Fighting each other? How primitive. They are barely worth our time, Commander. But their planet has resources. Good metals. Clean water. And the humans could serve as workers in our mines." Torvax nodded slowly. The Valari always needed more workers, more slaves. The other conquered species were dying too fast in the deep mines of their empire. "How many ships do we need?" Torvax asked. His assistant checked the data. "For a planet this primitive? Perhaps 100 vessels would be enough." But Torvax shook his head. He had learned long ago that fear was the greatest weapon. When you conquered a world, you did not send just enough ships. You sent so many ships that the enemy lost all hope before the first shot was fired. "Send the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet," Torvax ordered. "All of it." His assistant's eyes went wide. "All of it? Commander, that is 9,500 vessels. For one primitive world? I want to make an example," Torvax said coldly. "When other species hear about Earth, I want them to know what happens when the Valari arrive. I want them to know that resistance is not just useless. It is unthinkable." The order went out across the Empire. 9,500 warships began moving toward a small blue planet at the edge of an ordinary galaxy. On Earth, it was a quiet Tuesday night in Colorado. Lieutenant Una Park was working the late shift at the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Most nights were boring. She watched satellites. She tracked space debris. She drank too much coffee and counted the hours until her shift ended. But tonight was different. Una noticed something strange on her screen. A small dot appeared at the edge of the solar system. Then another dot. Then 10 more. Then 100. Then 1,000. Her coffee cup fell from her hand and shattered on the floor. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking. "Sir, you need to see this." Colonel Do-Hyun Lee walked over to her station. He was a serious man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the military for 30 years. He thought he had seen everything. But when he looked at Yuna's screen, his face turned pale. "How many?" he whispered. "The computer is still counting," Una said. "But it looks like thousands. Maybe 10,000 objects. They are moving in perfect formation. They are heading straight for Earth." Colonel Lee stood very still for a long moment. Then he picked up the red phone on his desk. This phone connected directly to the President of the United States. In 30 years, he had never used it. "This is Colonel Lee," he said. "Wake the President. Tell him it is happening. Tell him to activate Protocol Omega." Una looked at him with confusion. "Protocol Omega? Sir, what is that? I have never heard of it." Colonel Lee looked at her with something strange in his eyes. It was not fear. It was almost like relief. "There are things we do not tell new officers," he said. "Things we have kept secret for 50 years. Since before you were born. Since before I was born. No, Brian. He pointed at the ceiling. They are not the first visitors we have had from space, Lieutenant. Just the first ones who came with an army. Yuna did not understand, but over the next few hours, she began to learn the truth. The real truth about human history. 50 years ago, a team of scientists had discovered something buried deep under the ice in Antarctica. It was a ship. An alien ship that had crashed on Earth thousands of years ago. The alien inside was long dead. But the ship still had power, and it had a message. The message was a warning. It said that species like the Valari existed. Conquerors. Destroyers. They moved from world to world, taking everything, killing everyone. The dead alien had been running from them. It had crashed on Earth while trying to escape. And the message said that one day, the conquerors would find Earth too. Humanity had 50 years to prepare. And they had not wasted a single day. In secret, the nations of Earth had worked together. They had studied the crashed ship. They had learned its technology. They had built weapons that no one on Earth had ever seen. Weapons hidden in bunkers deep underground. Weapons hidden on the dark side of the moon. Weapons hidden at the bottom of the ocean. The public knew nothing. The governments had decided that panic would help no one. Better to let people live their normal lives, while the military prepared for the war that was coming. And now that war was here. President So-Yoon Park stood in the White House Situation Room, watching the same screens that Yuna had seen. Around him stood generals from every branch of the military. Their faces were hard. Their eyes were ready. "How long until they arrive?" the president asked. 72 hours, sir." President Park nodded slowly. He looked at the thousands of dots moving across the screen. Any other species would have felt despair. But the president felt something else entirely. "They think they are coming to conquer us," he said quietly. "They think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think this will be easy." He turned to face his generals. "Let them come," he said. "Let them learn what humanity truly is." The Valari fleet came out of hyperspace behind Earth's moon. Fleet Admiral Kess stood on the bridge of his destroyer and looked at the small blue planet through his viewing window. He felt nothing but boredom. This would be easy. This would be quick. By tomorrow, he would add another world to the Empire's collection. His sensors showed him everything about Earth. Primitive satellites floating in orbit. A small space station with only 6 humans inside. Chemical rockets that moved slower than Valari. Garbage ships. Radio signals filled with strange music and pointless talking. "They do not even know we are here," said his second officer. Admiral Kess smiled. His sharp teeth gleamed in the bridge lights. "Send the message." A powerful signal went out to every device on Earth. Every television, every radio, every phone, every computer. The Valari had done this 100 times before. The message was always the same. "People of Earth, we are the Valari Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately. Your leaders will come to us without weapons. Your people will serve the Empire as workers. If you obey, some of you will live. If you resist, all of you will die. You have 1 hour to respond." Admiral Kess leaned back in his chair and waited. He expected crying. He expected begging. He expected leaders screaming at each other about what to do. That was how it always happened, but Earth was silent. 1 hour passed. No response came. Admiral Kess frowned. Perhaps they did not understand. "Send the message again. Use simpler words." The message went out again. Another hour passed. Still nothing. Now Admiral Kess was getting angry. He was a busy commander. He had other worlds to conquer. These primitive creatures were wasting his time. "Fine," he said. "We will show them what happens to species that ignore the Valari. Move the fleet around the moon. Let them see our power. Let them count our ships and understand their situation." The Valari fleet began to move. 9,500 warships glided around the moon like a swarm of silver fish. They arranged themselves in perfect attack formation. Their weapons powered up. Their shields activated. They were ready to burn Earth's cities to ash. But as the first ships cleared the moon's shadow, something unexpected happened. Light flashed from the lunar surface. Not from one place. From dozens of places. Bright, blue, light that cut through the darkness of space like burning swords. Admiral Kess had 1 second to feel surprise before the first beam hit his shields. The shield held. But barely. "What was that?" he shouted. "Where did that come from?" His officers were screaming at their screens. "Weapons fire from the moon, multiple sources." "Commander, there are bases on the dark side. Hidden bases. They were invisible to our sensors." More beams lanced out. These were not primitive weapons. These were directed energy arrays that used technology the humans should not have had. They should not have had anything even close to this. Then came the railguns. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing. The bases on the moon held weapons that could accelerate metal rods to nearly the speed of light. When those rods hit Valari ships, they did not just damage them. They went straight through, in and out like needles through paper. In 90 seconds, 200 Valari ships were destroyed. Admiral Kess watched his fleet dying and could not believe his eyes. This was impossible. The scouts had said these creatures were primitive. The scouts had said they were weak. The scouts had said this would be easy. The scouts had been very, very wrong. "Return fire," Admiral Kess screamed. "Destroy those bases." The Valari fleet answered with everything they had. Missiles and beams and bombs rained down on the moon. The hidden bases had strong shields, but they could not survive that much firepower. One by one, the lunar weapons went silent. Admiral Kess took a deep breath. His hands were shaking. 200 ships lost. He had never lost even one ship in battle before today. "Commander," his officer said quietly, "I am receiving reports from across the fleet. Morale is shaken. Many captains are asking questions. They want to know how the humans had such weapons." "It does not matter," Admiral Kess said. He tried to make his voice strong. "We have over 9,000 ships remaining. They had a few hidden bases. Now those bases are gone. We move forward. We take the planet. We kill everyone who resists." But deep inside, something cold was growing in his chest. Something he had never felt before. Something that felt almost like doubt. In Seoul, deep underground, General Minji Cho watched the battle through screens that showed everything happening in space. Beside her, Dr. Taeho Kim typed rapidly on his keyboard. "We lost the lunar bases," Minji said. Her voice was calm. "Faster than we expected. But we hurt them," Taeho replied. 200 ships destroyed. That is more than they expected. Look at their formation. They are hesitating. They are regrouping. They are scared." General Cho nodded. "The lunar bases were never meant to win the war. They were meant to send a message. A message that said, 'We are not what you think we are.'" "Phase 1 is complete," Minji said into her radio. "All units prepare for Phase 2. Let them come closer. Let them enter the atmosphere. Let them think they have won." Across the planet, hidden forces began to wake up. Submarines rose from the deepest parts of the ocean. Silos opened in mountains and deserts and frozen tundras. Pilots climbed into aircraft that no civilian had ever seen. Humanity had one advantage that the Valari did not understand. For thousands of years, humans had been fighting. Not aliens, each other. War was built into their bones. It was written in their blood. They had invented 1,000 ways to kill, 1,000,000 strategies to win. The Valari had conquered weak species who surrendered at the first sign of danger. They had never faced a species that loved war. A species that was good at war. A species that had been waiting for this fight. Admiral Kess reformed his fleet and began moving toward Earth. He still had over 9,000 ships. He still had enough firepower to glass the entire planet. He would burn their cities. He would enslave their people. He would teach them the price of defiance. But as his ships entered Earth's atmosphere, he heard something on the human radio channels. Something strange. Something that made no sense. The humans were not screaming in fear. They were not begging for mercy. They were laughing. Captain Junho Baek sat in the cockpit of his fighter. The ship was black and sleek and moved like nothing the Valari had ever seen. It used technology stolen from the crashed alien ship, improved by 50 years of human engineering. Around him, 40 other pilots waited in their own fighters. They floated in a hidden hangar inside a hollowed-out asteroid. "This is command," the radio crackled. "Phase 2 is beginning. All fighter squadrons, you are cleared to engage." Junho smiled. He had trained his entire adult life for this moment. Every simulation, every drill, every sleepless night. It had all been for today. "Squadron," he said to his pilots, "let us show them who we are." The hangar doors opened. 40 black fighters shot into space like arrows from a bow, and the real battle began. Captain Junho Baek pushed his fighter to maximum speed. The stars became lines of light around him. His targeting computer locked onto a Valari destroyer 10 times the size of his small ship. He did not feel afraid. He felt alive. "All pilots, remember your training," he said through the radio. "They are bigger. They are slower. Use that against them. Hit them fast. Hit them hard. Do not stay in one place." His squadron of 40 fighters flew into a Valari carrier group of 500 ships. The math seemed impossible. 40 against 500. But math did not tell the whole story. The Valari had conquered species that surrendered. They had fought enemies that ran away. They had never fought humans. Junho fired his first shot. A beam of concentrated energy that punched through a Valari shield like it was made of paper. The destroyer exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Junho was already moving, spinning his fighter through the debris, locking onto his next target. His pilots followed his lead. They moved like ghosts. They appeared, fired, and vanished before the Valari could respond. The enemy ships were too slow. Their weapons could not track the human fighters. Their commanders could not give orders fast enough. In 15 minutes, Junho's squadron destroyed 89 Valari ships without losing a single pilot. "Return to base for resupply," Junho ordered. "We will be back soon." Admiral Kess received the report and could not speak. 40 ships had destroyed 89 of his vessels. 40 ships. It was not possible. It broke every rule of war he knew. But that was only the beginning. As the main Valari fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, the planet revealed its true face. From every ocean, submarines launched missiles that flew straight up into space. These were not ordinary missiles. They exploded in massive electromagnetic pulses that killed Valari electronics. Ships lost power. Navigation failed. Weapons went offline. From hidden silos across 6 continents, humanity launched its secret weapons. Weapons they had never used against each other. Weapons built only for this day. Plasma cannons that melted Valari armor. Railguns that fired projectiles faster than thought. Energy beams that cut through shields like sunlight through morning fog. The Valari had expected to face primitive rockets and nuclear bombs. Instead, they faced technology that matched their own. In some cases, technology that was better than their own. General Minji Cho watched the battle from her underground bunker in Seoul. Screens covered every wall. Each screen showed a different part of the fight. Ships exploding. Missiles flying. Fighters dancing through space. "Status report," she said calmly. "Enemy fleet has lost 1,000 ships since entering the atmosphere," her officer replied. "They are still advancing, but their formation is breaking apart. Their commanders are confused." Dr. Taeho Kim looked up from his computer. "I am monitoring their communications. They are panicking. They do not understand how we have these weapons. Their tactical computers cannot predict our movements. They have never seen warfare like this." General Cho allowed herself a small smile. "Of course they have not. They have never fought a species that has practiced war for 10,000 years." Above the planet, the Valari fleet was falling apart. Carrier groups broke formation as captains tried to save their own ships. Destroyers crashed into each other while trying to dodge human missiles. Supply ships turned and fled, leaving the warships without fuel and ammunition. Admiral Kess screamed orders that no one followed. His officers were too busy dying. On the ground, the situation was even worse for the Valari. Some of their ships had managed to land. They released ground troops. Hundreds of thousands of Valari soldiers poured out onto Earth's surface, expecting to conquer cities full of scared civilians. Instead, they found soldiers waiting for them. Sergeant Unji Han led her squad through the streets of Tokyo. She wore an exoskeleton suit that made her 3 times stronger than a normal human. In her hands, she carried a plasma rifle that could punch through Valari armor. "Contact ahead," she said to her squad. 40 enemy soldiers. Standard formation. They have not seen us yet. Her squad moved like shadows. They had trained for this in simulations 1,000 times. Now it was real. "Fire," Unji whispered. 10 plasma rifles fired at once. The Valari soldiers did not even have time to scream. They fell in burning heaps. Their fancy armor offered no protection against weapons designed specifically to kill them. "Move forward," Unji ordered. "Find more of them. Do not let any escape." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. The Valari ground troops were large and strong, but they were not prepared for human warfare. Humans used tactics the Valari had never seen. Ambushes, traps, guerrilla fighting, hit-and-run attacks. Every building became a fortress. Every street became a kill zone. Every civilian who could hold a weapon became a soldier. The Valari did not understand. On other worlds, civilians ran away. Civilians hid. Civilians begged for mercy. Earth's civilians picked up weapons and fought back. Admiral Kess stared at his screens and felt something he had never felt before. It was cold. It was heavy. It sat in his chest like a stone. Fear. This was fear. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked quietly. His officer did not want to answer. 4,000, Commander. "We have lost 4,000 ships in one day." 4,000. Almost half his fleet. Gone. Destroyed by creatures who were supposed to be primitive. Creatures who were supposed to be weak. Creatures who were supposed to surrender. "Commander," another officer said, "I am receiving messages from the captains. They want to know. They want to know if we should retreat." Retreat. The word tasted like poison in Admiral Kess's mouth. The Valari did not retreat. The Valari had never retreated. For 10,000 years, they had only moved forward. But today was different. Today, everything was different. "No," Admiral Kess said. "We do not retreat. We cannot retreat. If we return home with news of defeat, the Emperor will have us all executed. We push forward. We use everything we have. We burn this planet to ash, if we must." He gave new orders. Every remaining ship focused all weapons on major cities. If they could not conquer Earth, they would destroy it. No one would survive. Nothing would remain. But as his ships began to move, something new appeared on his sensors. Something coming from behind Earth's moon. More human ships, not fighters this time, capital ships. Large ones. Hundreds of them. Lieutenant Commander Hana Yoon stood on the bridge of the carrier Freedom. Behind her, 200 human warships powered up their engines. They had been hiding behind the moon, waiting for the perfect moment. "All ships," Hana said into her radio. "This is Commander Yoon. The enemy is weakened and confused. This is our moment. All ships advance. Show them no mercy." The human fleet moved forward. And for the first time in the history of the Valari Empire, one of their invasion fleets faced an enemy they could not defeat. Admiral Kess watched the human ships approaching. He counted them. He calculated the odds. He understood, finally, what was about to happen. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." But it was not impossible. It was happening. It was real. And for the Valari, it was the end. Lieutenant Commander Hana Yoon watched her fleet crash into the Valari formation like a hammer hitting glass. Human ships moved with perfect coordination. Every captain knew their role. Every gunner knew their target. They had practiced this battle in simulations for years. Now they fought it for real. Concentrate fire on their command ships, Hana ordered. Take out their leaders. Without orders, the small ships will panic. The carrier Freedom unleashed a wave of missiles. They flew through space in perfect formation, then split apart at the last moment, each missile finding its own target. A Valari cruiser exploded, then another. Then 3 more. Around her, the human fleet was doing the same thing. Ships that had been hidden for decades were finally doing what they were built to do. They were killing aliens. But Hana knew something that made this fight different from any other war in human history. She knew why the humans fought so hard. Why they showed no fear. Why they never stopped. It was not about pride. It was not about resources. It was not even about survival. It was about love. Every pilot in her fleet had family on the surface. Every soldier had children, parents, friends. When humans fought, they did not fight for abstract ideas. They fought for the people they loved. They fought knowing that if they lost, everyone they cared about would die. That made them dangerous. That made them unstoppable. Admiral Kess tried to rally his remaining ships. He screamed orders. He threatened his captains. He promised rewards for anyone who stood and fought. But his fleet was broken. The morale was gone. Ships began turning away, trying to escape Earth's gravity. "Do not run," Admiral Kess shouted. "Stand and fight. We are the Valari. We do not run." But his words meant nothing now. His captains had seen too many of their friends die. They had seen human weapons tear through Valari shields, like they were not there. They had seen a primitive species become something terrifying. They ran. Far away from Earth, High Commander Torvax watched the battle through a long-range communication link. He sat in his throne room aboard the Eternal Dawn. Around him, his advisors stood in silence. No one dared to speak. On the screen, Valari ships died by the hundreds. Human fighters danced through space, destroying everything they touched. Human warships advanced in perfect formation, pushing the Valari fleet back. "How is this possible?" Torvax whispered. "They were supposed to be primitive. Our scouts said they were weak. Our scouts said this would be easy." One of his advisors cleared his throat. "Commander, our scouts may have made errors in their assessment." "Errors?" Torvax's voice was cold. "Errors? We are losing 9,500 ships because of errors?" The advisor said nothing more. He knew that speaking again might cost him his life. Torvax watched the battle continue. He watched his admiral lose control. He watched his fleet die. And slowly, something changed inside him. The confidence that had built over 10,000 years of victory began to crack. For the first time in his long life, High Commander Torvax wondered if the Valari Empire had finally found an enemy they could not defeat. On Earth, the ground war was ending just as badly for the Valari. Sergeant Unji Han led her squad through the burning streets of what used to be a peaceful city. Valari bodies lay everywhere. Their armor was cracked. Their weapons were scattered. They had come to conquer. They had found only death. "Sergeant," one of her soldiers said, "we are receiving reports from all sectors. The enemy ground forces are surrendering. They are throwing down their weapons. We are minting we having." Yunji nodded. She was not surprised. The Valari soldiers had realized what the Valari commanders had not. This was not a species that could be conquered. This was a species that would fight until the last human was dead, and even then, they would probably find a way to keep fighting. "Take the prisoners," Unji ordered. "Treat them well. They might have useful information." She looked up at the sky. Even from the ground, she could see the flashes of light in space. Explosions. Ships dying. The battle was reaching its end. In orbit, Admiral Kess made his final decision. "All ships," he said quietly. "Full retreat. Leave the system. Return to Valari space." His officers looked at him with shock. Retreat meant failure. Retreat meant shame. Retreat meant death at the hands of the Emperor. But staying meant dying here, in orbit around this terrible blue planet. At least retreat gave them a chance. The surviving Valari ships turned and ran. They activated their hyperspace drives. They fled toward the edge of the solar system, desperate to escape the human weapons that had killed so many of their friends. But humanity was not finished. "Commander Yoon," the radio crackled. "This is General Cho. The enemy is retreating. What are your orders?" Hana Yoon looked at her tactical display. The Valari fleet was broken, scattered, fleeing. It would be easy to let them go. The battle was won. Earth was safe. But Hana remembered something her grandmother had told her when she was young. Her grandmother had survived a terrible war. She had seen what happened when enemies were allowed to escape. They came back. They always came back. "All ships," Hana said. "Pursue the enemy. Destroy as many as possible before they reach hyperspace. We cannot let them report back with full information about our defenses." The human fleet gave chase. Fresh fighter squadrons launched from hidden bases around the solar system. They caught the retreating Valari ships and tore them apart. Admiral Kess watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries were destroyed in seconds. Captains he had known for decades vanished in balls of fire. And then the humans boarded his flagship. The assault team came through the hull like ghosts. They moved fast and silent. Valari guards tried to stop them, but died before they could fire a single shot. Human soldiers in black armor swept through the corridors, killing everything in their path. Admiral Kess stood on his bridge and waited. He could hear the gunfire getting closer. He could hear his crew dying. There was nowhere to run. There was nothing to do. The bridge doors exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through. At their head was a small female with cold eyes and a steady aim. Sergeant Eunji Han had been called up from the surface for this special mission. Command wanted prisoners. Command wanted information. And Command wanted to send a message. "Admiral Kess," Eunji said, "by order of the United Earth Defense Council, you are now our prisoner. Your crew will surrender, or they will die. There is no third option." Admiral Kess looked at the small human female. She was tiny compared to him. Weak. Fragile. And yet she had just conquered his ship with a team of 20 soldiers. He thought about fighting. He thought about dying with honor. But then he looked into her eyes and saw something that made him stop. He saw no hatred there. No anger. Only cold, calculating purpose. This creature did not hate him. She simply wanted him to lose. That was somehow worse. "I surrender," Admiral Kess said quietly. The flagship was secured. The bridge was taken. And across the solar system, the last Valari ships were either destroyed or captured. Of the 9,500 vessels that had come to conquer Earth, only 17 managed to escape into hyperspace. 17 ships out of nearly 10,000. It was the greatest military disaster in the history of the Valari Empire, and on Earth, humanity began to count its dead and plan for what came next, because they knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The 17 surviving Valari ships limped through hyperspace. Their engines were damaged. Their shields were gone. Their crews were broken. They had left as conquerors. They returned as ghosts. High Commander Torvax waited for them at the edge of Valari space. His flagship, the Eternal Dawn, hung in the darkness like a mountain of metal. When the 17 survivors came out of hyperspace, he saw immediately how badly they had been hurt. Their ships were covered in scorch marks. Holes had been patched with emergency repairs. Some ships were barely holding together at all. "Bring the captains to me," Torvax ordered. "I want to know everything." The captains came. They stood before High Commander Torvax with their heads down. They could not meet his eyes. They were waiting for execution. That was the price of failure in the Valari Empire. But Torvax did not order their deaths. Not yet. First, he needed to understand. "Tell me," he said quietly. "Tell me how 9,500 ships lost to primitives." The senior surviving captain stepped forward. His name was Vorn. His ship had barely escaped with 30 crew members alive out of 2,000. "Commander," Vorn said. "They were not primitives. Our scouts were wrong. They were very, very wrong." Vorn told the story. He described the hidden bases on the moon. He described the weapons that matched Valari technology. He described the fighters that moved too fast to hit. He described the capital ships that appeared from nowhere. He described the ground forces that fought with terrible skill. And he described something else, something that scared him more than the weapons. "They did not fight like conquered species fight," Vorn said. "They did not fight to survive. They fought to win. There is a difference. Every other species we have faced wanted to live. These humans wanted to kill us. All of us. They enjoyed it." High Commander Torvax listened in silence. His 4 eyes blinked slowly. His gray hands gripped the arms of his throne. "You are telling me," he said finally, "that this primitive species defeated our fleet, not because they were lucky. You are telling me they were better than us." Captain Vorn swallowed hard. "Yes, Commander. That is what I am telling you. They have been preparing for us for 50 years. They found a crashed ship on their planet and learned from it. They built weapons. They trained armies. They were waiting for us." Torvax stood up from his throne. He walked to the viewing window and looked out at the stars. For 10,000 years, the Valari had ruled those stars. They had never faced defeat. They had never known fear. Now they knew both. "There is something else, Commander," Captain Vorn said quietly. "The humans. They let us escape. The 17 ships that survived. They could have destroyed us all. But they chose to let us go." Torvax turned around. "Why would they do that?" "Because they wanted us to carry a message home." Vorn held up a data chip. It had been placed in his ship's computer by the humans before they let him escape. Torvax took it and inserted it into his display. A face appeared on the screen. A human face. Male. Middle-aged. His eyes were calm but hard. Behind him stood flags of a united Earth. "I am President Seojun Park," the human said. "Leader of the United Earth government. This message is for the rulers of the Valari Empire." President Park paused. When he spoke again, his voice was like ice. "You came to our home. You threatened our children. You tried to conquer our world and enslave our people. This was a mistake. We are humanity. We have known war since before we had words for peace. We have survived ice ages that froze our planet. We have survived plagues that killed millions. We have survived our own worst impulses, our own weapons, our own hate. We have split the atom and walked on our moon. We have dreamed of stars we could not yet reach. Now we can reach them. And we are coming for you." President Park leaned forward. His eyes seemed to look directly at High Commander Torvax. "This is your only warning. If you send another fleet to Earth, it will not return. Not 17 ships, not one ship. Not a single survivor to tell the story. We will destroy every vessel you send. Every soldier. Every commander. And then we will follow your ships home. We will find your worlds. We will burn your cities. We will break your empire into pieces so small that the stars themselves will forget your name. You have one choice. Leave us alone. Forever. If you do, we will stay on our side of the galaxy. We will build our own future among the stars. We will not bother you. But if you come for us again, if you threaten our families again, if you even think about hurting our children again," President Park smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We will end you. Not because we hate you. Not because we are angry. Simply because we can. And because anyone who threatens our home needs to learn what humanity truly is. We are the species that conquered our own world. We are the species that tamed fire and split atoms. We are the species that looked at the stars and said those belong to us. We are builders and dreamers and warriors and survivors. And now we know we are not alone in the universe. Now we know there are enemies out there. empires that want to destroy us. Thank you for teaching us this lesson. It will make us stronger. This message is ended. Remember it well. The screen went dark. High Commander Torvax stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his advisors waited. They were afraid to speak. They were afraid to move. Finally, Torvax turned to face them. Send this message to every corner of the Empire, he said. Earth is forbidden. No ship goes near that system. No scout. No traitor. No one. The humans are to be left alone. One of his advisors dared to speak. Commander, should we not rebuild our fleet and attack again? We cannot allow primitives to defeat us without consequences. The other conquered species will hear about this. They will think we are weak. Torvax looked at him with cold eyes. Did you watch the same recordings I did? Did you see what they did to our fleet? We sent 9,500 ships. They destroyed almost all of them. They captured our admiral. They invaded our flagship. They let 17 ships escape only so they could send us a message. He grabbed the advisor by the throat and lifted him off the ground. If we attack them again, they will come for us. That is not a threat. That is a promise. And I believe them. I believe they can do exactly what they said. Do you want to test that belief? Do you want to be the one who brings humanity to our doorstep? He dropped the advisor, who fell to the floor, gasping. Earth is forbidden, Torvax repeated. Forever. In the darkness of space, far from both Earth and the Valari homeworld, something new was happening. Human ships were exploring. Human stations were being built. Human colonies were being planned. Lieutenant Una Park, the young officer who had first spotted the invasion fleet, now served on humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. She stood at the viewing window and watched stars she had never seen before. It is beautiful, she said quietly. Captain Junho Baek stood beside her. He had become a hero during the war. Now, he commanded this exploration ship, searching for new worlds for humanity to settle. It is also dangerous, he said. The Valari are not the only empire out there. There will be others. Enemies we have not met yet. Threats we cannot imagine. Una nodded. I know. But that is why we are here. To find those threats before they find us. To make sure what happened with the Valari never happens again. She looked at the captain and smiled. Besides, we beat one empire. We can beat others. We are human. It is what we do. Junho laughed softly. You sound like the president. Maybe. Or maybe I just sound like every human who ever lived. We fight. We survive. We win. She turned back to the stars. Out there, somewhere, the Valari were hiding. Afraid. Beaten. And out there, somewhere, other species were waiting to meet humanity. Some would be friends. Some would be enemies. It did not matter. Humanity was ready for all of them. They had dispatched 9,500 vessels to invade Earth. Only 17 returned. And across the galaxy, that story was just beginning to spread. A story about a small blue planet that should have been easy to conquer. A story about a primitive species that turned out to be anything but primitive. A story about humanity. And for those who heard it, the story came with a simple warning. Do not go to Earth. Do not threaten the humans. Do not make the same mistake the Valari made. Because if you do, you might not get 17 ships back. You might not get any ships back at all.